Here's a picture of the end of one of your wild chases. How are these chases done?
Well, the chases really were actually done right down on the streets. If we were driving a car like this and missing street cars and pedestrians, we actually were doing that. We were right on the street doing it. Of course, we had many policemen that we were in our service that were blocking off traffic, and we had our own traffic. We had our own pedestrians.
We did that in New York, too. We, in fact, did a picture we did called Speedy, where I had a horse car. We had two horses on it, these two horses, pulling a horse car down the thing, and we'd block off about 3 blocks. We looked like we had the whole police force there with us, but we had our own traffic. It wasn't cheap. And, of course, we had a terrible time that one. One of our own cars got in the way of the horses, and to keep from running into the car, the man had to pull a horse and went down the subway. It didn't hurt the horse, I'm happy to say, but we never used him again, I can also say. Boy, he was a little shy after that.
This is The Man in the Glasses, the official Harold Lloyd podcast. I'm your host, Brad Eastridge. Scott McGee is the director of original programming at Turner Classic Movies. A silent film and movie stunt aficionado, you can hear him on the commentary track with Bruce Goldstein for Criterion's release of Speedy. He is also the author of Danger on the Silver Screen, 50 films celebrating cinema's greatest stunts, published in 2022 by Running Press in conjunction with TCM. Harold pulled out all the stops for his triumphant final silent feature, Speedy, with all-star cameos, an insanely extensive location shoot, and a final chase to end all final chases. If you've seen Speedy, you can't forget Harold racing in a streetcar pulled by horses. But have you ever noticed another horse? We're extremely privileged to have the director of original programming at Turner Classic Movies, Scott McGee, with us, who's been there for over 20 years and is a stalwart of everything that we see on TCM, particularly the interstitial material and all the great videos in the ad breaks, or the lack of ad breaks, I should say, the breaks in between the movies. And you've been busy. A lot of great videos during the 31 Days of Oscar show up every year, but you've outdone yourselves this year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I should note that a lot of those pieces are put together by our promo team and other people within the TCM staff. Some of the original programming that we include in the 31 Days of Oscar, some of that stuff is much older. That's things that I was not particularly that I was not a part of. But you're right. There has been a lot of new originals on the air recently. We've had some new pieces on the Looney Tunes coming to TCM. We've had a new piece on background extras. We had a piece on an artist named Michael Kalish, who makes his art inspired by classic movies. So it's been a whirlwind, and it's been very gratifying to be able to bring these new stories and, in the originals delivery to TCM.
Well, February was an exciting month anyway to have Bugs Bunny as the star of the month. This whole Looney Tunes back to TCM is also a huge...
Yeah, here, I'm going to show off my new creation. My daughter gave me this Lego Bugs Bunny for Christmas.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just made it. I just finished it the other day. So.
Oh, this is great. I'm a Lego fan too, so I'm going to have to look out for that one.
And you'll be seeing more Looney Tunes as the days go by.
Let's go back and put on our TCM caps, and we'll be Perry Mason, the Warren William Perry Mason, since this is TCM, and we'll go to the curious case of the horse and the trolley car. And this is a mystery that you have discovered and possibly solved.
I don't know if I've discovered it or not. So let me just tell you the story of how this all came about. So in 2015, my very good friend Bruce Goldstein asked me to join him in doing an audio commentary track for the Criterion Collection's release of Speedy, 1928. And so I happily agreed. And I knew that Bruce was going to be able to talk about all sorts of things regarding Speedy, particularly when it comes to shooting in New York City. And so I wanted to talk about how the stunts were made, how they were conducted, and how they were shot. And so in my preparation, I looked at the film very, very closely, frame by frame, ostensibly to try to identify who the driver was, who the stuntman was, doubling Harold Lloyd in the film's climactic chase through the streets of Manhattan. For those who have not seen this film, the chase is between these henchmen and a streetcar, a horse car, which is this horse-drawn streetcar that used to be prevalent all throughout New York City prior to the advent of subways. And so Harold is trying to save the family business. And so he has to conduct this race through Manhattan on his horse car. In other words, a horse-drawn carriage. Well, I was trying to identify the stunt driver for this scene, but I could not. I don't know who the stunt driver is. But in the course of looking at these scenes very, very closely, I noticed something very odd. And it was in scenes of that were shot on location in New York City of the stunt driver driving the horse car. This is crucial. I'm not talking about the scenes where Harold is in the driver's seat. Those scenes were shot in Los Angeles. But the scenes in New York is what I'm referring to. So he begins the chase with just one horse. And it's the horse that you've seen throughout the film. This is a white horse. It wears a little hat in some scenes. And it doesn't have a name, but I've given, just for clarity, I'm calling it the horse Dolly, okay? At one point in the chase, early in the chase, Dolly needs new shoes. And so he stops at a blacksmith, deposits Dolly to have work done. Meanwhile, the horse car, now without a horse, is knocked down the street by another vehicle. So Harold gives chase to the car that's now going down the street, commandeers it, and then, in order to continue the chase, steals two other horses and finishes the chase. Well, for those of you who, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but for those of you who have not seen the film, with the two horses, the horse car suffers an unplanned collision with the girder to an elevated subway platform. It was not planned. And so what Harold and his team did was they wrote in a device so that they can figure out how to continue the chase, even with the horse cart, partially damaged. And indeed, the day ends. Well, going back after Harold steals the two horses, okay, you see the stunt driver, again, all of the scenes that are on location in New York City, you see the stunt driver with the two horses careening through the streets of Manhattan. And in some scenes, you can very, very clearly see in the back of the horse car, a white horse. There is a horse inside the horse car. There's no reason why there could be a horse in the horse car. There was never a scene where we see a horse being put in there. So it is indeed a mystery why this horse is there. Now, I have some theories, though, that when I first came across this and I did my due diligence in trying to determine if this was something that other people have realized. And rather than do a lot of research, I decided to go to the source. And so I emailed Kevin Brownlow with this theory and with this finding. And he said to me, I want to read it to you. He said, "What a remarkable piece of cinematic archaeology. I've seen that film on every kind of screen, from a 16 millimeter viewer to a huge screen in a public cinema. I have never noticed that extra horse. But your theory stands up as firmly as the horse. I'm sure you're right. I'm simply bowled over by your revelation." I haven't been able to find anybody else who can confirm this, but I'm sure somebody has noticed it, but they just never cared to follow through with it. So I have come up with a theory as to what happened. And my theory is Harold had intended, once the character commandeered the two horses, I think what Harold meant to do and what he had shot was a scene where Harold went back to pick up Dolly. I think he went back to pick up Dolly because it has been established earlier in the film that Harold has a soft spot for animals. When he and his girlfriend go to Coney Island, at the end of that sequence, there's a dog who is trying to catch up to them as they're hitching a ride back to home. Harold gets the dog into the back of the truck with him and his girlfriend, and they go home. Well, so, and also throughout the film, he's established that Dolly is very important to him and to his business. Dolly is very much a part of the story. What I think happened was when after that scene was shot, the scene that apparently doesn't exist anymore, after the scene was shot of Harold somehow getting this horse into the back of the car of the trolley. Once that horse was in the back, Harold couldn't explain how the horse didn't get hurt during that collision, after that collision. And so I think he just got rid of the horse. I think he got rid of Dolly being put into the back. And that is also why I think, this is my theory, I think this is also why Harold had to use the Williams process, the early back screen projection process that you see in some shots in that film that are very awkwardly used and inserted.
We were going right down the main street, and we were going fast. You couldn't go too slow. We couldn't undercrank too much, because if you did, it made the action of the people walking, it made them not natural. It was abnormal.
Oh, yes. Weren't these dangerous?
But, the chases were very dangerous, lots of them, but they were real. They, of course, today, most of it is done with process. But even then, right now in process, the cameraman has to take a chance. Somebody's got to go down that lane and get something for...
Excuse me,
go ahead.
What do you mean by process? I don't follow you.
Well, probably process is a screen where they take the picture, and it's like a rear projection, and then they take and put your actors or actresses, your characters, in front of this screen. And in other words, we put an automobile in front of the screen, and the action is on the screen in the back, and looks like you're riding right down Broadway in New York, where you're taking it in the studio. And the whole process is used all the time now. But we didn't have process in those days. If we did have had any form of it, it was so lacking in perfection that we used it very little.
Yes.
And it's so unlike Harold. It's so unlike him in the shooting of his action scenes, where he would have a scene that looks so clumsy, or a shot that is so clumsy as the Williams process was at the time. So I think he had to resort to this because there was no other way to have that sequence make sense without that horse. And so he had just decided to do without to cut the horse out altogether of any gags, but he still had the horse in the back of the car in those on location shots, because he just didn't have a choice. He couldn't go back and reshoot all of that stuff. So he just had to make do. And, there's another piece of evidence that I think proves my theory correct. And that is, there is a still of a scene, again, not in the film, but it's a still of Harold trying to assist a woman into the back of the horse car, with Dolly, meanwhile, in the back of the still, looking back at Harold, trying to get this woman into the back. I think that was supposed to be sort of a rhyme to what Harold would later do with Dolly herself, trying to get her into the back of the car. So that's the only way I know to make it make sense is that that's the reason why the Williams process was there. And that's why why the horse is there to begin with. It's just because Harold had to cut all of that bit out in order not to have to explain, well, why was the horse not killed in that very violent collision?
Gangsters have stolen the streetcar. Harold must get it back before the time limit runs out. No filmmaker had made such flamboyant use of New York City. But location shooting had its perils.
But what happened is they were shooting in sequence, as they did when they made a lot of those films. And once everyone saw this crash, and that the driver had been shaken up but not killed, and that the horses seemed to be all right, and they had this spectacular piece of film, Harold said, "This is great, I've got to use this. And what we'll do is we'll set a camera up, I'll get off stage, you pull me, and I'll land and roll." Everyone got together and they actually rewrote for that bit right on the spot.
Bruce Goldstein, he wondered if the two horses that were involved in the crash weren't injured. I don't know if they were or not. It doesn't appear that they were, but they could have been. But regardless, if there was a horse in the back of the car, it would have been hurt. So Harold wouldn't have been able to explain that. And so he just decided to just get rid of it altogether. So that's the mystery horse for you from Speedy. And again, I don't know if anybody else has ever noticed this before, but I'm very open to any other ideas. Otherwise, I can't, there's no other explanation why a horse would be in the back of that car.
No. It's one of those things that you would never notice on your own until somebody points it out to you. And kind of like the fly that crawls into Belloc's mouth in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's one of those things you can never unsee. It's like, oh, I'm waiting for the fly to crawl in his mouth. Now It's like, I'm looking for the horse. Last night I put Speedy on. I'm pausing and I'm stepping frame with my remote. And it's like, okay, horse, no horse, horse, no horse. And I can tell you there are continuity shifts. You know this because you've run through it, but everyone watching online eventually will see this too, that sometimes the horse is there and then it magically vanishes. In Bruce Goldstein's piece for the Criterion Blu-ray,
In the Footsteps of Speedy,
which is a great piece. Everyone who doesn't have the Criterion, go out and get it now, obviously. But you should definitely look up that and listen to Scott and Bruce's commentary because they're both incredibly insightful and a lot of fun. And especially if you spent any time in New York, these are fantastic pieces on the then and now too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Bruce's point in the horse providing some sort of ballast, seeing some of the shots where there's no horse in the back, the streetcar when there's no passengers in it running really fast, is pretty rickety. And this is clearly a mistake at the L train. He gets into that pillar because he's either trying to swerve to hit the car passing or to swerve to miss it, and the horses get spooked. Either way, the impact is so obvious, and you can see the stuntman flying through the shot with the reins. If it were a real horse, not only would it have gotten injured, maybe the horse shifting its weight would have been the ballast change in the back of the car that might have shifted the weight to cause the accident.
So yeah, he did think that it was perhaps providing some sort of ballast so that the streetcar wouldn't tip over. But I don't think that it was a real horse. It was definitely a fake horse. And if there was ballast in the streetcar, it would have been sandbags. It wouldn't have been something like a fake horse. So, but yes, I do agree. It was definitely a fake horse. There was never a real horse in the back of that car, unless there were shots that we just didn't see. But again, shots that would have had Harold Lloyd in the scene. So not a stunt driver. At no time do I believe that there was ever a real horse in the back of that car.
And then the shot
careening through New York City is what I should say.
Sure. And in the shots that we have, those are what you're saying is the shots that we have remaining with the horse are all stunt shots. They're all shots with the stunt driver. Yeah. And you can tell there are certain points where they're making a turn or they're hitting a bump or something where the horse would have moved.
Yeah, the horse never moves.
The tail doesn't even move.
It has this eerie look to the right, and it never changes.
Because sometimes you're watching from in front of the cart and you can see the horse's head and it's just staring straight ahead. It's like it's right out of the carousel or something. You know, they just put a stock horse right out of the Coney Island sequence almost or something.
Yeah. For any of your eagle-eyed viewers who want to go through the film frame by frame, if you go to the sequence right before the car collides with the girder, there's a shot where the horse car is moving from right to left on the screen. It's just a great shot. You can clearly see the horse in the back of the car. It's like you said, now that you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's just so bizarre that all of these years that has escaped major commentary. It's really kind of funny, but it's also yet another example why I love movies, particularly silent films, because you can see all sorts of secrets being revealed if you just know where to look. And and I even thought, I bet you there are some people who still don't know that Babe Ruth isn't the only New York Yankee to appear in Speedy.
Yeah, tell us about the person in the background of the cab.
Talking about a horse, here we're talking about another horse, an iron horse named Lou Gehrig. So in the scene where Harold, he's a taxi cab driver in this scene, he gives Babe Ruth a lift to Yankee Stadium. And when Babe gets out of the car, you can see through the car itself a man appear in the window, stop, look toward the camera, and then just before he walks off, you can see him stick out his tongue. That was Lou Gehrig making a cameo appearance behind Babe Ruth and Harold Lloyd. And it's stuff like that where I just love. And so having this horse show up in this film as well, it makes you wonder what else is being hidden in plain sight.
Well, that's right. Because we're also talking about not only a New York that's being documented for posterity that we don't have anymore, but this is Babe Ruth's 60 home run season that this is taking place during, and we're getting to see the Babe on film. Some people think it's stock footage. Rich Carell says that this is actually Harold's crew that stayed for a couple of games at Yankee Stadium, and he just happened to hit a home run in the second inning of the first game they went to, and they just shot that and put it in.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's correct. Yeah, I think Bruce talks about the Yankees on the audio commentary track a little bit more.
Yeah, he does. And in the case of the defense here, well, let us bring back in the case of the Babe Ruth riding in the cab scene, because that is all half of a taxi cab carved out and put on a camera truck. And so they're driving him around and he's pretending to get all crazy about Harold's wacky driving skills. Meanwhile, for the reverse angles of Harold in the front seat, we've got him on top of a camera truck while he is looking towards where we're headed. The driver is underneath where he is and the camera is on a plank. Then for the scenes, the POV shots of Harold, or the shots of the front of the car, we have a hood ornament placed in front of the camera on the camera truck so that we get some sense of perspective that we're really inside this car.
Yeah.
If, like you say, if the horse was not part of a deleted scene, then why wouldn't we just have a shot of, say, a fake horse head or two in front of Harold on that same camera car instead of using the Williams process shots, which would have looked so much more realistic? So this sounds much more like Harold, famously a previewer. He probably tested this movie 50 times while they were editing, and maybe at some point the horse sequence was in. We already know that there was this, like Richard Simonton says, that the fight with the old men versus the gang, that went on like 3 times longer. But they realized that the laughs started to peter out after the laundryman starts to burn everybody's butt with the iron. So they just decided to cut it there. Is that another case where maybe they decided that intercut throughout this chase are moments of him trying to get back to the blacksmith, are him trying to stop and get Dolly, are him trying to put her in the streetcar that is maybe losing momentum? When instead,
it could have been a pacing issue. You're absolutely right. It could have been a pacing thing. Yep.
Because it's just like it's outdoing the girl shy chase, basically, for a horse-drawn carriage. So in order to keep that suspense and that excitement, then maybe it was a question of narrative and maybe it was a question of pace. The other reason that I think that you're right on target with this being a deleted scene with a payoff is there is one shot of that horse's ass right in your face, because it's right in the foreground as the gangsters are watching the trolley car pull up into the Pop Dylan's station.
Yep.
And it's their reaction of what is going on. You can tell once you've seen it. You wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it, but once you've seen that horse butt, it ain't going nowhere. It's right in the middle of the frame. And these guys are clearly reacting to this horse butt in their face.
That's right.
Now, that was a shot that they couldn't go back and film, and that's not a shot you can do in process. So they've got to just leave that as the shot that exists as probably the payoff for this gag about the horse originally.
Yep,
as the
that's
gangsters
right.
are watching it.
That's right. That's the only way it makes sense to me.
And you can tell in that shot also that it's a fake horse, which just makes it funnier because it's jittering a little bit along with the streetcar. The tail isn't swatting back and forth or anything. The legs aren't moving.
Yes, exactly.
There's one other point about this, and that is your detective work about stunt people. Have you had any success in tracking down what Rich Carell thinks may have been a rodeo driver or who it might have been driving the horse carriage?
It might have been a rodeo driver, because in my research, I did find out that in New York City, I think at Madison Square Garden, at least I assume Madison Square Garden was a thing back then. Regardless, it was somewhere in Manhattan. There was a rodeo exposition going on. So they did have some trick writers in town. As to whether or not Harold reached out to them, it's possible. And it's very likely that he did, because to be able to handle a team of horses, even just two teams or two horses in a team, it takes a skilled hand to do that, particularly with something as unwieldy as a horse cart. And so, yeah, you would have had to have a professional do that, I would think. But no, I have not had any luck identifying who it is exactly, but it being a rodeo driver is probably the case.
You've pointed out in your book, Danger on the Silver Screen, how so many of that first generation came from rodeo, carnival, circus backgrounds.
Yeah.
And because Harold Lloyd's crew were already looking for two horses in New York that could act as stunt horses, it would make sense that maybe along the way, that's where they would come across somebody who was a wrangler.
Very likely. And it's very likely that whoever was driving, he probably owned those horses.
Okay. That makes sense.
Most likely. It's not like you just go down to the street market and buy a couple of horses.
Right. And there's no way that you're going to, even though it's, the most successful comedy star of 1928, you're still not going to necessarily say, oh, here you go. Here are my two prize horses. You let your guy take care of them. I'll just forget about it. No way.
The thrill pictures on buildings and such seem to score with the public so strongly that a lot of people knew me, strange to say, more or less only as a thrill comedian. in spite of here's 8 pictures that intervened, and in those pictures, one would be a chase, another one would be a fight, another one would be a scare sequence, because one of the things that in comedy, especially in that era, the finish of the picture was extremely important. Well, I guess it is now. But then in that particular time, the finish was tremendously important to leave them laughing as you say goodbye, in other words.
Horse or no horse, it's one of the great sequences of Harold Lloyd's career. It's his last silent film. And, I was just so happy to be able to take part in the audio commentary track for Criterion and with Bruce. And, that I stumbled across this really, really cool mystery is gravy for me. And I'm happy to be able to share it with somebody who might be able to find the evidence of all of this. I don't know if there's documentation in the Harold Lloyd files. I don't know if there is or not, but I would be certainly interested in looking at it if there was.
We'll have to get Richard Simonton on the case for this one, and maybe Rich Carell knows something. We know that they were scheduled for 4 weeks in New York, and they ended up spending 12. So part of this also could have been that they didn't they were running out of time after they were already 2 months behind schedule, and they'd already had 2 crashes with the horses, and they had to pack it up. But what's interesting to me is in John Binkson's book, Silent Visions, the great, very missed John Binkson.
God rest his soul. He was a good one. John
Wonderful. I was really hoping to have him on the show too.
Yeah, he was a sweetheart.
We have a lot of the back of this book dedicated to Speedy and New York Then and Now. I have found, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 pages with the horse. So he may not have even known it, but once you're looking for the horse, it's right there. But it's again, not in continuity. Half the shots he's missing.
I'll tell you that John was one of the first people to reach out to me when I had shared this theory, and he didn't notice the horse either. And he was he was the first to really kind of, give me an attaboy for even seeing it in the first place. But to his credit, he was looking at other things. I mean, the books that John Bingston has written, they are unlike anything that you will ever find on your bookshelf. I mean, they are one of a kind, those 3 books. And I'm so thankful for John and what he gave to film history.
Me too. And it's crucial for any silent movie fan to get his books on Harold's, Buster's, and Chaplin's location photography.
You can't expect an expert like John to be looking at a horse's ass when he's got all of these other things to look at.
That's exactly right. even with his training as an attorney and lots of experience looking at the horse's ass, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. This has been a blast to get to dig into this with you.
Well, Brad, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be able to talk to you about Harold Lloyd. Anything for Sue Lloyd. I'm there. But just to be able to share this little tidbit that I stumbled across, and I'm not even saying I discovered. I'm just saying I have lifted it up a little bit so that maybe somebody can take it and figure out exactly what happened. But yeah, just to be able to lift up and to celebrate Harold Lloyd and Speedy in particular, I'm happy to do it.
The Man in the Glasses is a production of Harold Lloyd Entertainment, entirely without AI. To find out more, go to haroldlloyd.com, the official Harold Lloyd Facebook and Instagram pages, or contact us at haroldlloydpodcast@gmail.com. Next time, Film Forum's Bruce Goldstein joins me and Suzanne Lloyd to discuss his part in the Harold Lloyd Renaissance of the 90s and 2000s, programming silent comedy for repertory cinema, and making his Criterion documentary, In the Footsteps of Speedy.
I took a young assistant named Miles Emanuel who went to the New York Public Library, and we had to look through uncatalogued, unindexed microfilm. I said, I knew Harold was filming in these months in 1927, 3 months. So we just rolled through the mic. I know there's going to be an article. Eureka! There's an article in the New York Mirror, which you cannot find online. It was a Hearst paper. It says, Harold Lloyd filming Labor Day weekend. And the cops, where's Harold? Everyone said, where? Harold wasn't there. He wasn't there when they were filming the chase. He was going to the fights, or he was going to see Chicago and Broadway for the 10th time. He was having a ball in Manhattan.